These are the disquieting images that show Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar was callously hiding out in relative comfort from his underground lair as he ordered his terror group to carry out the bloodiest massacre Israel has ever endured. Declassified photos and video released by the IDF on Saturday night reveals how Sinwar, who was killed earlier this week by a single gunshot to his head after being forced out of his underground lair in Gaza, callously planned to hide in comfort as his foot soldiers carried out the deadliest attack in Israel's history on October 7, 2023. Sinwar is widely considered to be the chief architect of the bloody massacre, which saw 1,200 people killed and 250 taken hostage by Hamas and other terror groups, according to Israeli tallies. More than a year later, 101 hostages still remain in captivity in Gaza. Two images provide evidence of the meticulous planning that went into ensuring Sinwar remained well-resourced in his underground lair, which was discovered by Israeli soldiers in the Tel al-Sultan area. They show how the Hamas leader could watch his terror group's exploits on a wall-mounted television from the comfort of a makeshift sofa with cushions and pillows. Fans anchored to the walls steadied the hot and humid temperatures during the warmer months, while a clock, reading books, chairs, and other supplies spread around the room helped sustain his stay underground. A second image shows several more chairs, a Hamas flag, and even a makeshift laundry line. The IDF has also released a 3-minute-long video showing Sinwar, flanked by young children, mundanely carrying water bottles, plastic carrier bags, furniture, and other supplies through a tunnel to his hideout. Chillingly, the activity took place in the dead of night, just hours before Hamas launched the bloodiest massacre Israel has ever endured. Sinwar can be seen repeatedly walking back and forth through the same tunnel, starting from 10:44 p.m. on 6 October, just 8 hours before terrified citizens first reported a mass terror attack. The first to emerge through the dark tunnel, with power cables snaking the entire length of the ceiling, are two young children with backpacks. One wears a Barcelona FC shirt and a backpack, the other a blue Ronaldo shirt sporting the number 7 on his back and an additional pink bag over his shoulder. Behind them is Sinwar, holding plastic bags in his hand, followed by a woman wearing a hijab and carrying a black handbag. When she notices the camera above, she briefly pauses and smiles before continuing on. Minutes later, Sinwar is seen again, this time returning with more bags. By 11:41 p.m. and in the moments following, Sinwar can be seen carrying in water bottles and large bags on his back in a repeated process that continues for the next few hours. Throughout, Sinwar remains chillingly calm and walks at a casual pace. At 12:46 a.m., one of the young boys can be seen still helping Sinwar, who has begun moving in small items of furniture and cushions. Almost an hour later, at 1:32 a.m., the young boy and Sinwar haul in a larger object, which has been covered in a gray patterned cloth. The time on the clock by the end of the footage is 1:32 a.m., just 5 hours before the first terrorists were spotted breaching into Israeli territory. The unsettling images and video were released today as it was revealed Sinwar was killed by a single gunshot to his head, his autopsy has found. Israel's most wanted man was killed on Wednesday after being hunted by intelligence services and the Israeli Defense Forces for over a year. The 61-year-old, dubbed the Butcher of Khan Yunis, was finally taken out apparently by chance after an hour-long firefight of trainee soldiers on a routine operation in the Rafah area of the Gaza Strip. The strike has seen a shockwave spread across the region, with Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei declaring Hamas is alive and will remain alive. During the fierce battle, 2 militants fled to one building while Sinwar, whose identity was not known by the Israelis until much later, escaped to another. In a graphic display of the intensity of the encounter, the Hamas leader was found with electric cable tied in a makeshift tourniquet around his arm, which was wounded by shrapnel from a small missile or tank shell. But Dr. Chen Kugel, who oversaw his autopsy, told the New York Times it wouldn't have worked in any case. It wasn't strong enough and his forearm was smashed. The terrorist chief was later shot in the head, the director of Israel's National Forensic Institute revealed. It is not known who fired the bullet or what kind of weapon was used to deliver the fatal blow. After the dust had cleared, Israeli soldiers realized the body found in the rubble of the now blown-apart building bore a striking resemblance to Sinwar. They cut off one of his fingers to confirm his identity. According to the Israeli military, Sinwar had been forced out of the underground lair where he was cowering as they covertly closed off streets and blew up tunnels in the area. Dr. Kugel said he was pale, explained by the amount of time he spent in Hamas' subterranean network, and weighed over 150 pounds, showing no signs of malnutrition. Continuing, the Israeli medic said, "It was only when I stepped outside that I internalized that this was the man responsible for more murder than anyone in the history of the country." The body is now held by the country's military alongside hundreds of corpses of dead Palestinians, to be used for a future trade with Hamas. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei today responded to the death of Sinwar, saying it will not halt the axis of resistance and that Hamas would live on. His loss is undoubtedly painful for the axis of resistance, but this front did not cease advancing with the martyrdom of prominent figures, Khamenei said in a statement. Hamas is alive and will remain alive. He was a shining face of resistance and struggle. With a steely resolve, he stood against the oppressive and aggressive enemy. With wisdom and courage, he dealt them the irreparable blow of October 7th that has been recorded in the history of this region. Then, with honor and pride, he ascended to the heavens of the martyrs. The axis of resistance, built up with years of Iranian support, includes Hamas, the Lebanese Hezbollah group, the Houthi movement in Yemen, and various Shiite groups in Iraq and Syria. The groups describe themselves as the resistance to Israel and U.S. influence in the Middle East. Last night, the Prime Minister called on the international community to make the most of this moment to push for peace after Hamas leader was killed in a gunfight. Sir Keir Starmer, after joining us, French and German leaders on Friday, said the killing of Yahya Sinwar offered an opportunity to step up ceasefire talks that have so far failed to produce a breakthrough. He said no one should mourn the death of Hamas leader Sinwar. On his hands is the blood of innocent Israelis killed on October 7th and over the years of terror, and also the blood of Palestinian people who suffered in the chaos and violence that he sought and celebrated. Allies will keep working together to de-escalate across the region because we know there is no military-only solution. The answer is diplomacy, and now we must make the most of this moment. What is needed now is a ceasefire, immediate and unconditional release of all hostages, immediate access to humanitarian aid, and a return to the path towards the two-state solution as the only way to deliver long-term peace and security. A unit from the IDF's 828th Bislamak Brigade was patrolling Tal al-Sultan, an area of Rafah, on Wednesday morning when it came across a group of 3 Hamas fighters in the street and engaged them in a firefight. The terrorists were on the run, moving from house to house, the IDF said, and became split up. One of them, since identified as Sinwar, ran alone into one of the buildings. He went up to the second floor, and troops responded by firing a tank shell in his direction. The unit, made up of trainee infantry commanders and reservists, then began to sweep the area, according to Israeli media. 2 grenades were thrown at them, one of which exploded while the other failed to go off, Yahya reports. The troops decided it was too dangerous to proceed and pulled back, sending in a mini-drone to trace the fleeing fighter instead. Dramatic footage released by the IDF shows the bloodied Sinwar, his face concealed by a scarf, throwing a stick in a final attempt to defend himself against the drone just seconds before he was assassinated. 2 120mm tank shells slammed into the building, as well as a surface-to-surface Matador missile, according to Israeli reports, with shrapnel scything across the upper floors. Unaware they had taken out Israel's prime target, the soldiers did not return to the site until Thursday morning, when soldiers from the 450th Infantry Battalion were sent in to get a closer look. As they inspected the dead, they realized one bore a striking resemblance to the Hamas leader. Graphic images emerged of his corpse lying on the rubble surrounded by Israeli soldiers, while close-ups showed a catastrophic head wound and multiple injuries. He was found with a weapon, a flak jacket, and 40,000 shekels PS 8,250. Yahya Sinwar had a lot of cash and fake passports on him. He was ready to flee. Israeli Army spokesman Colonel Olivier Rafowitz told French outlet CNEWS this morning. He claimed that the items Sinwar had on him, which allegedly also included a card from UNRWA, the UN aid for Palestinian refugees, may show that he was ready to flee and leave Gaza and his men behind. Booby traps around the area meant the corpse had to be left in place, but part of one of his fingers was removed and sent for testing. Confirmation of his death took several hours, with multiple tests carried out, and his identity eventually confirmed with dental records and fingerprints. 4 hours after it confirmed it was investigating whether the Hamas leader had been killed, the military issued a simple message on social media eliminated Yahya Sinwar. Sinwar had been a prime target for Israeli forces since October 7th, but Israel was allegedly hesitant to make an assassination attempt amid reports that he was surrounded by Israeli hostages and was carrying a bag packed with explosives. It is believed that Sinwar had been moving from place to place without the hostages since the end of August, when 6 abductees Carmel Gat, Hirsch Goldberg Pulin, Alex Lubnov, Almog Sarosi, Yuri Danino, and the late Aiden Yerushalmi were found dead in a tunnel, according to a new report by N12. Israeli troops reported no sign of hostages at the location where he was killed. IDF spokesperson Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari confirmed the Hamas leader's death in a televised statement on Thursday night. He said Sinwar was responsible for the most brutal attack against Israel in our history when terrorists from Gaza invaded Israel, massacred Israelis in their homes, raped our women, burned entire families alive, and took over 250 men, women and children, babies, hostage to Gaza. For the past year, Sinwar tried to escape justice. He failed. We said we would find him and bring him to justice, and we did. It was Yahya Sinwar who decided to wage war with Israel while hiding behind civilians in Gaza. He added that 101 hostages still remain in captivity in brutal conditions. Israel's foreign minister also confirmed the news on Thursday. Mass murderer Yahya Sinwar, who was responsible for the massacre and atrocities of October 7th, was killed today by IDF soldiers, Israel Katz said in a statement. He said Sinwar's death was a great military and moral achievement for Israel, adding that his death opens the possibility for the immediate release of the hostages and change that will lead to a new reality in Gaza without Hamas or Iranian control. Sinwar was born in Gaza's Khan Yunis refugee camp in 1962 and joined Hamas soon after its founding in the 1980s. He dedicated himself to its radical Islamist ideology, which seeks to establish an Islamic state in historic Palestine and opposes Israel's existence. He became the protege of Sheikh Ahmed Yassin, Hamas's founder, as a young man, and was first arrested by Israel in 1982 while he was a student at the Islamic University in Gaza.